Feeding and diet for your leopard gecko is presented in part by RepCare, television and videos for happy and healthy reptiles.
Well, I just finished my lunch and I sure am full, but I'm sure this little guy right here would like to eat. I noticed we have some appetizing worms over there.
Let's talk about his diet. Now, we want to remember that the diet for a young leopard gecko is a little bit different than an adult. All right, now we have the various types of foods here. The main diet would be crickets. We'd want to give them large crickets that you can buy at a local pet store. The wild crickets that you find around lights at night, the big black ones, got a very heavy skeleton. It could cause impaction. So crickets would be the main diet, also mealworms. Now, this large leopard gecko, which is an adult, would eat the super mealworms. I know they look large, but that's the perfect size for him. The younger ones, as we've shown before, will eat these smaller mealworms. Occasionally, as a substitute or like a dessert, we could give them waxworms.
And why is that?
Well, two things to remember. One, the more genetic variety going into the body that they can process, the healthier they're going to be. They pull out. The body pulls exactly what it needs. If they get everything that they need, the body can take care of itself. So the more variety in genetic material is very important. Waxworms, we don't do too many because they're high in fat. Fat in cold-blooded animals, or ectotherms as we call them, can prevent the absorption of certain vitamins. Could become a problem. Also, a lot of people are skittish about live insects, so they freeze them first. Freezing kills thiamine, an important B vitamin. So we don't want to freeze their food. Not only that, but they like to see their food moving just as much as we don't want to see our food moving.
Well, I know that every day I take my vitamins after I eat a meal. Does a leopard gecko need to take their vitamins?
It's really very important because we cannot duplicate 60 different types of insects from the wild. We can only do 2 or 3 that are commercially available. So we have 2 different supplements here. One is the calcium powder, and we only give that to juveniles. From a new hatched leopard gecko for about 10 or 11 months till it becomes an adult, we give them this every day on everything they eat.
And why is that?
They have a very high requirement for calcium because they grow rapidly. You can see how stout they are. They have very strong bone structure. And there's a little bit of calcium in the insects, but not enough. Now, in the wild, they eat their skin when they shed. In captivity, most of the time they eat their skin, but they still do not have enough calcium.
What supplement would you give an adult leopard gecko like this one?
We don't usually give adults calcium. You can once a week if you want, but usually the little bit they get from insects is enough to maintain themselves because their bones are not developing anymore. They're there. They have to replace cells, of course, but the little bit they get from the insects they eat usually take care of it. We can test the tail. When you hold a leopard gecko horizontal, there should be stiffness to his tail. If the tail starts hanging real limp and they don't use it, they're entering into metabolic bone disease. That's the furthest point from the heart, and that'll tell us first if the animal's running out of calcium. Or have an expert that you can consult with, either a veterinarian or a staff herpetologist. Also, we have a product here. This contains vitamins and minerals. It's very important because they can't get 60 or so different insects going in their body. This completes that particular factor. It has everything that they need, including amino acids, so they can build protein. If you want a healthy, stocky, very happy, very nice leopard gecko, you would give them vitamins 2 times a week and calcium 5 times a week if they're a juvenile. If you have an adult, we just do the vitamins 2 days a week. Easy way to remember it, always do vitamins on the weekends for any size gecko, but babies need the additional calcium during the week.
How would you administer the vitamins and the calcium to the leopard gecko?
We do what we call shake and bake. We get a little plastic container, especially with children in case they drop it, and you put a pinch of whichever powder you're going to use, put the insects in, shake them or swirl them a little bit, and then you release them. The powder will stay on for about 5, 6, 7, 8 minutes. So what you wouldn't want to do is say, here's a week's supply of insects now, and they got all their vitamins or their calcium. It'll wear off in a few minutes.
Is it okay to mix the calcium and the multivitamins?
You could, but you may lose a little bit of efficiency. We like to use them separate. That's why we do vitamins on the weekend, and we do the calcium during the week on the juveniles. It's much more efficient. When you have a lot of things going down into the stomach area, they can only absorb so much, so you actually be wasting, and we don't want to do that. I might mention a little caution at this point. Crickets sometimes, if you leave them in, they're nocturnal, and at nighttime, if they don't get enough food, they get what we call protein deprivation. They're deprived of protein. They will actually eat the toes off of an adult lizard.
Oh, that's horrible.
They'll keep biting and biting and biting until the lizard finally gets up, and they'll chew the toes off, and you see tendons in the morning, no toes. So there's two things we do. One, we try not to leave crickets in, or leave cricket food for the crickets so they have something to eat and they can drink the water. Usually they leave the leopard gecko alone. But it's good to check when you go to bed at night, turn the light on and look and see if they are irritating him, but usually that works.
Feeding and diet for your leopard gecko was presented in part by ReptCare, television and videos for happy and healthy reptiles.